And we're live. Yeah.
Yeah, we're live.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Welcome to this week's stream. I'm very happy. We started a little bit late because I was like having internet, not internet. I was
To
having.
this week's stream.
Ooh.
I'm very happy. We started a little bit late because I was like having internet.
Oh my
To
God.
this week's stream.
I think I have
I'm
one.
very happy.
I fixed it. So that thing always happens
Yeah.
to me where I have like my YouTube of this stream on and then it's not muted and then you just have that coming off. But I'll just rephrase what I was saying. So hi everyone, welcome to this week's stream. With me here I have Zell, and I'm super excited about, what we're going to be discussing today. It's a topic that I feel like a lot of people probably will struggle with if they're starting off their journey in the JavaScript land. So I'm happy to have Zell with me here, talk about learning JavaScript. And yeah, Zell, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Zell. I have been coding for quite a while now. I think about 8, 9, 10 years perhaps. I can't remember. It's been a long time anyway. And after I coded for a while, oops,
Today is a fun day.
technical errors day. Okay, so all right, forget it. I'm just gonna switch it back to the way I usually use it.
It was fine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, fine. Today it likes to be like this. Okay, fine. All right. Where was I? Yes.
Yeah.
I've been coding for a while, and after a while, I started teaching people how to code, and I started writing about CSS initially in my early days, and a lot of people were asking me about JavaScript, so I went into that direction, and I created this monster course called Learn JavaScript that has 300 plus lessons, and I think it's similar or even better than a full university course on JavaScript if there was something like that. So what's interesting is a lot of bootcamp graduates, they came to me and then they say that help, I still don't know how to write JavaScript. How do I go about it? And I go into this course and it solves the problem magically for them. So whatever I've baked into the course actually has some principles that allows you to learn the to learn JavaScript. And there's like processes, there's ways of handling your emotions, and all that stuff that comes into play when you're learning that language.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I actually went through the Learn JavaScript curriculum, and I was like amazed at the level of content that was packed into it. And I think that, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, it follows like a bootcamp um, format where you have like you have the sessions with the students, or they just buy the course. I'm curious because I don't know this.
Yeah, so it's not a bootcamp format right now. It's you buy the course and then you go through this at your own time.
Okay.
The reason why I started that way is because I've been used to writing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just decided to write everything down. And to me, writing when it's very clear, it's actually a lot easier to get information compared to like a video, for example.
Mm.
That's why it was writing. I am thinking about doing like a bootcamp style thing, but I'm not too sure how I will take it because it's huge. Like I could split it into 20 weeks and and
You're not.
we're not done with this thing, you see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's a little bit hard to split it up in the bootcamp style. I've been thinking about it though.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's also like not easy having just one instructor with probably you have like maybe 40 to 50 people per course. That's a lot of work. But yeah, I think that the Learn JavaScript course is amazing. And speaking about learning JavaScript, how what would like be your advice for folks? I know you mentioned that you still have people coming from bootcamp coming to purchase your course just because they don't feel like they're confident enough in the skills that they've gained from that. So, how would you say for developers that are interested in learning JavaScript without any previous experience, how do they go about this journey?
Oh, that is actually my experience, so I'm quite like well versed in it in a way. So the first thing to do you have to do is to suspend the disbelief that you do not know JavaScript. So that is one thing that causes many people to fail, because if you come in with that belief that you cannot learn JavaScript, you're not good enough at it, whatever you do, you're just trying to beat yourself up. And the reality is there are materials out there, and you have read the materials, and the materials are not written for a person at your level. So that is perfectly fine. Like there are two approaches to it. One, you find something that works for you, which is kind of like Learn JavaScript, where I write for complete beginners all the way through. Or
Mm-hmm.
second, you sit down and then you let yourself be frustrated by it, and you slowly allow the information to come in. So there are techniques like, for example, if you go through a lesson, like I will recommend going through the fundamentals first. And when
Mm-hmm.
I talk about fundamentals, it is the basic stuff. Don't do arrays, don't do arrays, skip arrays, skip for loops, because that is where most people get get tripped up with, right? So go through the basic like variables, functions, adding of event listeners, and generally try to get something out with what you're trying to do. Like think of something you want to do. The problem with this approach is most people think too big. Like they want to build an app and then they do not know where to begin. So what I would propose is actually you start something small. Like for example, like if you do not know what to build, you go to Learn JavaScript, scroll down to the 20 components over there, build it in that order. All right, because it's the easiest way to go about starting it. Like the first thing you can do is build a button, like a button, and then a menu pops up or shows
Mm-hmm.
up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first one. And then the same thing will be like a model that pops up and closes, but it's not accessible yet. But doesn't matter. At least you get it to work first. Rather, like accessibility and all that thing comes later. Like
Yeah.
to be honest, because when you're learning everything is new, you just want to take one step at a time, solve one problem at a time. Right. So that's where I would say. Then on the emotional part of things, people will be anxious about they are not getting fast enough. They want it faster. They want to learn. They want to learn faster. They want to get a job. They are comparing themselves with people who seem to learn faster than them, and that emotionality is a trap in itself. I talk a lot more about this in this thing called a JavaScript roadmap, which I have. If
I was
if
actually going to bring it up, so I'll
yeah.
just link it as well. I was
Yeah.
going to bring it up later. Yeah.
So essentially, what JavaScript roadmap does is it gives you a roadmap to learning JavaScript, and that is completely different from most roadmaps you will find out there about learning web development or learning JavaScript. Because for most roadmaps, they will just give you this, bam, you have to learn JavaScript and then learn TypeScript and then learn Angular and then learn React and then learn Vue, and all the different kinds of large frameworks out there that it's hard for someone new to even get used to. Like even for me as an experienced person, I have not learned most of the things out there inside a normal roadmap that developers put out. So I guess that kind of roadmap introduces you to the ecosystem of what is possible, but it doesn't actually forward you towards your goals. And in this case, when I talk about the goals, is to learn JavaScript. So the actual roadmap is to go into, I split it up into 4 phases, to be honest, like very simple.
Yeah.
The baby phase, like like baby when you're trying to crawl, what do you do
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to learn to crawl, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's the variables, the functions that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to the next one is the child phase, you're just playing around with things, and then you're trying to learn how to make things work, like like, or if you turn on the tap, water flows, that kind of stuff. So in that case, you want to learn how to build the simple stuff. Like the button is something, the model is something. When you get slightly better, you start incorporating other elements of the DOM into it. Like you can start creating certain things, like accordion would begin to work when you know for loops. So like after
Yeah.
model and like the button thing, you go and learn for loops and make accordions, and then carousel comes into here as well. Calculator actually comes into this place, although calculator can be very complicated depending on
Mm-hmm.
how like if you build like the iPhone calculator, I actually have an article somewhere, I can't remember where it is. If you build the iPhone
You
calculator,
have
you can
to.
take ages to build this one. I've tried it. It is in my Learn JavaScript course. That's why I know it takes ages to build it. Then
Yeah,
you start
because
thinking
it
about
also
other
has
different. Yeah, then you start thinking about all the different states of what this thing can possibly be, and you start thinking about testing, at least front end testing. Don't go into back end testing, all that stuff yet. It's just build all the stuff, like, and then you think about drop down menus and sure, just go. Yeah, I have I've actually wrote to a point that I have no idea what other components you can build for a web UI.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to have like as a problem, because you've explored everything possible to to teach people, and you currently don't even know what else to build. I actually liked, like, when I found the JS roadmap, I liked two things that I liked. First, that it was free, and also that you outlined, like, from the beginning, like you said, like from baby steps, because people that would probably find this, they're also like in a state where they are just starting out and they don't necessarily have like any previous experience. So like, I find that if you're teaching something, or if you're an educator, like going from the basic up until like intermediate, advanced level is always super helpful. And I like that you like follow that process. Let's see. We've talked about like trying to get into JavaScript, learning it. In your own experience from like having students and personally also learning the language, what are like the hardest part of learning it? Where do you feel like people start getting into like stumbling blocks when you're in your process of learning the language?
Mm, I would say the first thing is people try to go too fast for their own good. Like, in a way, they will go, how do I write clean code? But you don't even know how to write code yet. So why do you bother about clean code at this point, right? So I actually considered this, which is why I included clean code like somewhere in the middle of the entire thing, where after you build certain things, a certain amount, then you begin refactoring.
Mm,
So yeah, that's one of the bigger things. The second biggest thing is for loops. Like I said, you need to have something to put your mind to, like have something concrete, like, oh, it's an accordion, or you loop through a DOM element and you can do something about it. But otherwise you'll be like, I loop through this, so what? So that's the problem with most programming materials, to be honest. Like, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit because I'm doing a course on asynchronous JavaScript, and I'm going through OAuth authentication and all that stuff, right?
mm,
And then
mm,
I go into there, and then you go like, oh, this is how you do, for example, client credentials grant. And then I go like, why do you even use client credentials grant in the first place? And I'm thinking about it, and I search the entirety of the internet, I don't see an answer. So I
yeah.
processing whatever information I have and trying to explain why you use this and why it works and what is the state of the web like with this right now, and like, does it matter to you as someone who's trying to code? So that's the way I write all my stuff, like always
Mhm.
having the person who's trying in mind, like what's the best, what do they need, what do you need to know in order to build whatever you want to build. And all the
Yeah.
other stuff that is unnecessary, well, we just put it aside. Like all the complexities, let's put it aside until you're ready for it. So, like, for example, so going back into JavaScript, another
Mhm.
thing that most people have problems with is this thing called object-oriented programming.
Mm, yeah.
And if you look at my course thing, my course structure, object-oriented programming is all the way down at the bottom, like the 19th or 20th chapter, I can't remember. And that is because object-oriented programming actually doesn't matter. Because you don't know it, but you have already been using it most of the time. It's baked into how the APIs
Mm,
are being structured.
yeah.
But you writing object-oriented programming, like structuring your code in an OOP way, requires you to have a lot of knowledge in building stuff first. And what most programs teach is, after like teaching you all the basic necessary stuff, they jump into OOP somehow, and people are expected to know how OOP works and try to build with OOP, and then that's where everything goes off, because the abstractions are unnecessary in that case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with like taking out like the unnecessary stuff, at least in the beginning of your learning journey, because eventually you're going to like get to a point where you would need to learn it, right? And a lot of times when people ask me, or generally with people that I find that they're learning, it's most of the things that you're focused on is mostly because they're influenced by what they see, probably online. When you see like people talking about React, oh, probably I'm learning arrays tomorrow, I want to learn React, just because you see that, oh, there's React and probably I should be doing that because other people are doing it. I don't think I think I think with programming or with the tech in general, things move fast. That's true. But you don't need to also like try to be two steps ahead just because you want to be doing what other people are doing. So I definitely agree with like just taking it slowly and moving along from there. Great.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. On this point, I'm actually like 20 steps behind now. I used to, like I used to be very on point like with CSS because I started there. Like I
Mm,
know the latest things. And then now I go like, what?
so many new tools.
So
Yeah,
many new things.
I also think that for me personally, seeing how everything is going in the tech world, Web3 and all, if you're too pressured to try to keep up, you might eventually get to the burnout stage because you're doing your work, you're trying to do your day-to-day job. You're also like trying to do this. For me personally, I don't learn anything until I need to use it, right? I don't think you should be feeling pressure to do like learn multiple languages or whatever it is that you find enticing, right? That's how I feel about the topic.
Mine is slightly different because I learn for fun, like sometimes like, but generally speaking, I would say you want to think about what you want to build or where you want to go to. For example, someone who is trying to go for a startup role is very different from someone who's trying to go for an agency role. Like if
Mm,
you're going for an agency role, then perhaps what you want to do is more on the HTML, CSS side, design side of things. Try to make things pixel perfect as much as possible. I know that's impossible, so let's not get started there. But trying to make the design come to life, like responsive and all that stuff, and trying to make the animations. Because when it comes to the agency stuff, it's the things that pop that is
yeah.
important. So if that is the thing, then there you go, and that is where you focus on. If you're trying to do something similar, trying to do like startups will be different because startups will go all over the place, right? And if you're talking about JavaScript in startups, then you have to start learning how to do the interaction part of things, which is when certain frameworks come into play. I haven't actually started using frameworks myself because I've been focusing on vanilla JavaScript so much, and I realized that you can actually do everything without frameworks. And
Mhm.
at this point, web components is quite robust, so I got to a point where I'm thinking about whether even picking up frameworks in the first place. But Svelte looks good compared to Vue and React. I used them in the past, like I don't really use them nowadays, but from what I know, like Svelte looks the cleanest of them all. But well, that's an aside thing. Going back
Yeah.
into learning, then if you're in a startup, if you're going to a startup role, then you start to split between like front end or back end JavaScript developer, engineer, sort of kind of thing. And if you slightly go into the back end side, you start to have to learn about Express, Node.js, databases, MongoDB, or something similar to that. There's a whole lot of information over there. Like OAuth, like authentication, connecting to APIs. When you start connecting to APIs, you have no choice. If you're doing it alone, you have no choice but to learn some backend because costs and all that stuff. Like you
Yeah.
get errors from it, right? So, like basically, what do you want? Which is what you're talking about. It's something that you need, right? In this case, mine is where do I want to go,
Mm.
and what does that require? Like for
Yeah.
example, like if you build apps, you start to have to go into how do you make like user authentication stuff. You can use a framework like Auth0,
Mm-hmm.
which uses OAuth, like
Yeah.
OAuth,
To do
Auth0. That's
everything. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And some people use Passport.js on Express without knowing what Passport.js does. So For me, when I learned it back in the past, like a couple of years ago, I threw away everything. I wrote my own middleware just to figure out what the hell was going on. And that's
Yeah.
how I learn. Very slow, but I get the base right, and then I know how to build on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with JavaScript ecosystem right now, there is a lot of like should I call them like services modules that would pretty much do everything for you, right? But it's always good to know like the basis, the big basis of that. And in terms of like authentication, I also like have done stuff with Auth0. I've also done it from scratch by myself. So yeah. Interesting. Um yeah. Hi Michael and Hide. Hyde. I know that I pronounced, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but yeah. Um, I want to ask you some like learning techniques that you've applied because I personally have tried some and I'm just curious to know if there are all for yourself, if you use any techniques for learning new things. And if you do, please share with us.
What do you mean by learning techniques? If I
How
ask.
you learn, yeah, how you learn stuff. So examples could be learning by building or learning in public, right? Or using this approach called the Feynman's technique. I don't know. There are so many different ways that people learn stuff. I'm just curious to know how you approach this.
I think I'm a mixed bag.
What?
I'm a mixed bag because I don't have a framework
Okay.
for learning. Like,
Ah.
what I do is I experiment with things and then I record stuff. Basically, I've done it a lot better in the past. I'll be honest. Like, I've done it a lot better in the past where I record stuff that I'm learning and then I publish them on my blog.
Mm,
That is the best way I learn. And the whole notion is if I'm publishing something on my blog, it needs to be good. And if it needs to be good, I need to research what the hell is actually going on. So, for example, the latest thing that I learned that I've releasing a blog post on soon next week. I've been dragging this blog post for a while. Is on cross-site request forgery.
mm,
It's like a very scary topic, and then everywhere you go like, and then you go blur of all things, right? And then in some sites you go like, okay, it says you say you can do it this way, but does that really work? And then you have to start testing it out. So I
mhm,
got the thing, I started testing, I got the information, I tested it out. Oh, it works, it doesn't work. If it works, I'm going to put into my article. If it doesn't work, I'm going to, okay, this doesn't work. That blog is talking bullshit. I'm never going to go, I'm never going back to that blog again. Now, for example, like some blogs are misleading in a way that they say certain things, but um, it's it's really skewed from the actual definition of things, right? And that Wikipedia is actually a really good resource. I've never thought about Wikipedia like that, but for cross-site request forgery, for example, Wikipedia was
mm,
really good. All webs was really good, so I use those two as my major resource and
mhm,
cross-reference everything from there. Because this is something I do not have ability to test out much, right? So there's a lot of cross-referencing as a learning process,
mhm,
noting down stuff, as I'm reading, I copy paste into my notes and then I go through them later if I need to. So this process is actually relatively new, but it created solid information here.
mm,
Then I'm noticing there are two kinds of CSRF requests, and one is normal one is login CSRF, and how do you handle normal? How do you handle login? And then I have questions like, okay, if I want to know how to handle a normal CSRF request, I need to know how a CSRF request happens in the first place, right? So I start reading about how do I trigger a CSRF request like a
like
hacker.
rabbit holes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's how I go about doing it. Like, let me bring out another example for
Okay.
OAuth because I'm
Okay.
writing a course on asynchronous JavaScript and I'm
Mhm.
diving into the API OAuth route.
Okay.
Right. So then the first thing is which resource is the most credible of all that you can find. So like having a credibility of that resource is important. And the most credible resource is what? The spec.
Mm,
So I've checked different sites and certain things say certain, like people say similar things, but how accurate is that? And I got to a point where, because of security, I need to go check the specs because security is so freaking damn important,
Yeah.
right? And the whole notion of why specs come about is because I also read this article about local storage and cookies, and why
Mm,
you should not use local storage and you should use cookies. Like, it was big about a while
seen
back,
that one. Yeah, I've seen it. Maybe.
and I have been scared by that article. To be honest, I'm like literally shitting my pants somewhere, and I go like freaking out everywhere, and I'm afraid to use local storage because I use local storage for a while. Then what I did was, okay, it's time to get clear of everything. And then I went through, I researched the specs, what does the spec says, what does local storage says. Oh, the only problem is actually XSS. And XSS, if you get cross-site scripting, which is XSS attacks on your
Mhm.
site, even if you have if you use cookies or even if you use local storage, it doesn't really matter. You're fucked either way.
Yeah.
So it's about going through that process because um coming from a point of view where I do not have anyone to teach me because I work alone. So perhaps that is important. Like, if you have a senior, ask your senior, problem solved. They probably have answers, and you don't
Mm,
have to waste your time that way. I'm doing all of this because I need to write a course, and then there's no other better resource to solidify what I'm trying to understand to communicate. But well, if I'm talking about something that other people have expertise in, like for example, I'm learning about testing JavaScript on the back end, and
okay.
I go to Kent C Dots with the testing JavaScript course. He shows me a lot of stuff that I have no mental model of. So I go like, okay, trying to go through the course and try and learn what the hell is going on. And then I try to apply and I go like, oh shit, this is so different from what I'm seeing from his thing. And then I go,
Mm,
okay, now I need to begin setting up my own test structure, which is very different from his one, and then hacking things away, and then solidifying something. But the problem with hacking, the problem with hacking is that once you hack to a certain point, you forget about what you hacked.
because
And
you've gone through so many rabbit holes, like you're just
correct,
yeah.
right? You've gone through so many things to the point that you don't have no idea what you did. And if you stop there and come back a couple of months later, you lose almost, like, you won't lose everything, you will lose a couple of hours going, what the hell did I do? And then you go like, that will probably take about 1.5 hours maximum to get
Mm,
back to where you were. And you're like, oh, I did this because of that and that and that, which is why sometimes the documentation is important.
mhm.
Although I'm pretty bad at documenting my own stuff for myself. I'm
Yeah.
honest, like, there's too many things to do. And the best way for me to consolidate the information is always a blog, because I have to freaking, like, when I write it in an article form, I process it so well that I never forget it again. So that's one of the things. And if I write it in a blog, I know I wrote it somewhere. I have this weird thing where I remember the things I write. So I don't even have to Google for something. I will Google for my name and regarding this thing. Okay, oh yeah, my article says.
I think that's a huge flex when you just search on Google and your name comes up. Oh, okay, I wrote that. Click on it. That's super nice to learn about your process. Is somewhat similar to how I also find so I also make write articles and make YouTube videos on technical related stuff. And it's the same thing for me. Do like a lot of research, check like actual documentation, because of course you would find like a lot of people have written about the things that I'm also researching. Good, it's good to see what other people are saying, just to learn how they are approaching teaching it, because I'm also going to be teaching it, but also like fall back to the original resource, like you said, for you, the spec, which is interesting. So thank you for sharing that. We have one question, actually, two questions. Kelechi is asking, at what point do you think it is right to start building stuff with TypeScript for someone with JavaScript knowledge?
I
Yeah.
have not used TypeScript. I have no idea. But if you are building something so complicated that you need extra help with your own syntax and stuff, perhaps that's the point to consider. Before that, I wouldn't consider like for me right now is I'm trying to learn enough stuff, and then I'm gonna start building my own apps. Like I've actually been wanting to build my own apps for ages, but
Mm,
I've been spending so much time writing about stuff that I didn't build my own thing. So I'm
that's
kind of pissed about
interesting.
it.
That's interesting. I'll ask you another question about freelancing, but let's answer this one from Michael. For beginners who wants to learn about JavaScript and all this coding, how do you go about it? I think we covered this at the beginning if you were not
We
here, but
kind of covered it, but it's slightly different from the way he phrased the question. So
okay.
what we can talk about it in a way where, what do you want, like where we began, right? So
Mm,
Michael, you can rewind back. I'm gonna do a quick summary. So
mhm.
what do you want? Do you want to go towards more like an agency role? Do you want to go towards more like a startup role? So those would change the way you look at things. Like the agency role people, you need to be better at HTML, CSS, and some JavaScript for the animation stuff. Where because that's what the world is there about. For the startups part of things, you kind of want to think more about functionality. So JavaScript in that way, or the backend if that's needed. So think about where you want to go. Like if you want to be a freelance developer, which kind of freelance developer? If you want to get hired, which kind of job do you want to do? And of course, where do your own interests lie? Which is more important than getting a job, because another problem that people have that is that I want to get a job in 3 months. Can I learn JavaScript to get a job in 3 months? I go like,
Mm,
hell no. But I'm trying to be polite to not say that, because if you're trying to go for a job, then you're learning and then you use that as your goalpost, but the job goalpost is always moving. So you do not know where is enough. So like
yeah.
getting a job is a sideline. It's not learning JavaScript. It's a complete different sideline. It's a complete different skill. It's something else you need to tackle. So no, don't conflate the two together. Otherwise you just get confused and
Yeah.
stressed.
Yeah, I think it's like it's always a bit confusing when I also like get asked that question how I should reply to it. I don't even think that you can finish learning JavaScript, right? So how I see it is can you learn enough of the basics to land a job that would allow you learn on the job, right? Because most companies right now are looking to hire intermediate. Like it's pretty hard to find a company that will hire like somebody that just started learning JavaScript in a few months. But yeah, if you have the mindset that oh I'm on a journey and I'm learning this thing, right? And use that too because you can't really know everything in 3 months. It's impossible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when it comes to job search, right, I'm not good at job search because I have not had a job in my life before. But the way I would approach things is I would not look for a junior position, because the whole notion of someone hiring you is that they want you to do stuff for them, right? If you are projecting yourself as a junior position, then you are looking for someone to teach you, which is you are taking from them in that way, but you're not giving to them. So I will actually go towards, all right, let me know. Well, let me think about what an intermediate should probably know, and then I'll
Mm.
go for that. Get the skills up. I do not have to be perfect. Like be able to build anything with JavaScript on the front end, at least, for example. Yeah. So that would be something like that. Then the other skill about coding, about interviews is, you have to start doing lead code, which I suck at.
Mm.
Like coding interviews, you have to hack the interviews, that kind of stuff. I'm terrible at it.
I know. I've been there. I think that right now a lot of jobs or interviewers are now like leaning towards like doing front end challenges instead of like lead code, which is impressive because I've gone through like interviews from like last year and a couple of years back, and most of them would give me like coding challenges to solve a problem, be it with like Vue or vanilla JavaScript, which is nicer because to be honest, I'm also on the fence with having to like do lead code or algorithm related questions. But yeah, it's what it is right now. It's finding a job, and I think I would go back to being a freelancer because I'm very curious to learn that you've never had like a full-time job. You've been working for yourself. How did that start and why did you decide to just stick? with freelancing? Yeah,
I have to go to my origin story.
fine. Happy to
Okay.
hear it.
So initially, when I learned the code, I was in London. I was alone. No, okay, let me try to shortcut the story to such a point. My first job is when I was coding, is when I was interning. So at that point, I'm an admin person inside this company, and I have just learned coding 2 months ago on my own, like hacking around, building a WordPress site. And I go like, hey, I built this WordPress site, like they were using WordPress, and back then it was WordPress, right? So I go like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I can build a WordPress site, and then my manager goes like, wow, can you change the color on this one? Yeah, so easy. Okay, change the color. Done. And you're like, oh, and then slowly from that point onwards, I started inching more from admin into the coding side of things. And this company was a boutique hotel company, and their website was being outsourced to somewhere in the States. They are in Shanghai. And then I go like, okay, since I'm learning on the code side of things, do you want this or that? Because like hotels, it's important for hotels to have a calendar widget to book stuff, right?
Mm.
And they don't have it. And it's like, oh, this is so bad. I'm like, let's build a calendar widget for you. Would you like that? Yes. Okay. So in order to build that, I will need your code. Like, do you have access to the code and all that stuff? So I got the source code for the WordPress, and I go like, man, this code sucks. If they can charge $15 an hour for this sort of code, I can charge $15 an hour too. Let me try to get freelancing. So that's how I started, with that naivete, with that courage to go and strike it out. Then I went like online, and then I did 2 websites for $50, two complete WordPress websites for $50, because I was like such a greenhorn. Nobody would want to build something for me. And then I go like, okay, one guy was pretty good, one person was pretty nasty. I'm never doing a site for $50 again. So that was what happened. Then I came back to Singapore, because I'm in Singapore. And
Yeah, I'm like $50. Well,
yeah, $50. I
for
spent one
me,
month, one
yeah.
month on each site, like $50 just that. But thinking back, it's quite stupid, but it was something I had to do to gain that confidence.
Yeah, it's totally valid, especially when you're like you've not done anything before to show that. I mean,
Correct. And
you
of
know
course,
this.
I got lesser than 1 year experience. I'm not trained in this thing. Yeah. And so when I came to Singapore, I went for meetups and networking on the stuff. And then I go like,
Mhm.
hey, there was this agency website that is under development. I go like, hang on, the design doesn't look a little bit right. So like the website is just under development. And I go like, hang on, maybe we can just improve it slightly by doing this. And then I go and send it to them, and like, here's what I changed. And then they go like, thanks, and then they didn't get back to me. I go back to schooling, that kind of stuff. I'm still in school at that point, like last year in
Yeah.
university. I
Mm.
decided to stop doing finance. I decided to start doing code. So it was a risky decision, like a
Mm.
career change in a way.
But it's
By
okay.
that time, yeah. And somehow the agency came back and asked me, hey, do you want to, like do some work for us part time? Our front end person is leaving. Do you know SAS? I'm like, yeah, I'm good with SAS. I know how to use it. Like, what do you need? And you're like, all right, cool. How much do you want to charge? I'm like, I don't know. How much should I charge? And I literally asked that question, oh my god, it's like such a dumbass.
Yeah, that's the wrongest thing to do because they're
Uh,
going to lowball you. Yeah.
well, the thing is, this person was quite nice to me at the point, like,
Okay.
and then he went like, okay, you think about how much do you want to earn for a full-time job, and then you half it, lor. Uh,
Mm.
so you half it, because we are going to spend like part-time, right? Part-time, I think 20 hours, okay lah. So I do like 3.2K, because in my world, I think that's about the average pay of a graduate at that point, like. And then I halved it, so there's 1.6K, and then I work for 20 hours while schooling. I'm not out of school yet, so that's pretty cool for me. And I go like, oh yeah, cool, let's do that. And then he answered yes straight away, so I go like, shit, I should have raised my prices. But
Yeah.
okay, that was a good thing. And
Yeah.
one
That's
one
interesting.
interesting thing, like this, when I start talking about this story, I can't help but share this. Like, I was doing a finance project in my school, and I
Mm.
was I had to do it because I I screwed up, and then I need to find a professor who is willing to do a one-on-one project with me
Mm-hmm.
to get my finance degree, because otherwise I will be graduating with a standard business degree, which I just wanted to make sure I got that,
Yeah.
because I was studying finance, right? So as I met my professor, we started talking about, oh, what's next. I started saying I don't want to work in a bank, I don't want to do finance anymore, I want to code. And then we started talking about websites, and what happened, like, long story short, I charged him $3,000 for a website.
Wow.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
I get like $50 to $3,000. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, okay, cool.
Like, if you were to amount for like the time between this period, how long was it?
How long was it? So I would say the time I was coding the website for
Mm.
$50 was about March, April, May, around that period of time. I think the
Mm.
second website was in May. The moment I charged my professor for 3,000, I think it was September.
Ooh, that's cool.
4 months. 4 months.
Yeah. Wow. You should also like do make tutorials about how to ace freelancing, because
No, I can't. I can't. The
yeah.
reason why I don't do it is because I do not have, first of all, I do
Mm.
not have the ability to get all freelance clients coming to me. I have not honed my skill in that regard yet. So what I've did in the past was go to different agencies, and then I'll be a subcontractor. So that's kind of like, okay, you go to an agency, they think you're good, and then you work for them. So that's kind of where it is. But on the freelancing side of things, how do you attract clients online? No, that's not what I'm good at. So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
good. I can't share
Yeah,
that.
of course. I totally get that. I also feel like, or from my own, I've never been a freelancer, but I used to just think that it's hard because you have to convince and convince people, because people would probably want to find, if you go through the route of sharing your work. For example, you have a blog, you have like a site with all your designs or work that you've done, that shows like them that, oh, you have the ability to do the project that you're asking for. But otherwise, I feel like there's also like, when you think about sites like Fiverr, for example, there are so many people looking for the same thing, right? I just think I have this notion in my head that it's harder to find clients if you're um doing freelance work. But from your story, I already see that like the benefits are there, right? Because you can easily charge what you want. Yeah.
It's not really so much about charging what you want. It's really about like where does it fit all together. Like, for example, if I were to charge for a site right now, I'll go for like 10 plus K, but nobody will want it because I'm charging 10 plus K because I rather spend my time doing something else, like writing my course and all the
Yeah.
stuff I'm doing right now, right? But nobody will want it, at least for the people who are starting out, because 10 plus K, you go like, that's very expensive. So it's a mix of the demand and the supply that really comes in. Um, if you know the online game, then good for you. I do not know it, but at least if I'm talking to the friends around me, or the people around, they don't really look for that. And most people are looking for designs where they
Mm,
can afford. Like they think about it in a budget form of kind of thing, where it's hard. Like, to me, it's hard to get freelance as a designer or a developer,
mm,
because I can't I can't put my words in the form of the value that they will get. But if I were to go about something else, like say marketing,
mm,
content writing, or like sales page writing, copywriting, that is very clear. I can just go and say, let's do like X% cut or something like that. Then there's no risk on their side. There's no risk, that there's all the upsides. So it's a lot easier to sell that way. But
mm,
on development and on design, it almost feels like there's contention, because what is good design, right? And how can you prove that your design actually helps the conversion without having all the whole conversion stuff set up? And there's a lot of information. So
yeah.
instead of, because I don't know, maybe I'm finance trained, which is why I'm always thinking about the money side of things. But I guess when that happens, you probably shouldn't go into conversions or money or that kind of conversation with people. But if it's design, you talk about what they get is the emotions of.
Yeah. Mm.
So like depending on who your client is, who you want to talk to, how they react to things, you have to talk in a different way.
I think I agree there with like not focusing on the money side of things, but what they get out of the relationship that you're trying to get. Interesting.
So oh yeah, let me give you an example of how I charge my friend 2.5K for a Jamstack site.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, so this is what happened. This is a close friend, so it's kind of like half half. Like you can't really use it as a freelance thing. But
Mm.
I know this friend suddenly came to me and asked me, "Hey, do you know Jamstack?" Yeah, I know Jamstack. How do you know that term? Because non-web developer would not think about Jamstack, right? And so she did some research and all that stuff, and then she's like having a problem with her WordPress site. She's feeling constricted about it, and she
Mhm.
wants something to just allow her to write easily. So what I showed her what I did before, like this is my site. Everything is in the code editor, haha. And
Yeah.
like you can include files here and there. You don't have to go into WordPress. You don't have to log in, go everywhere. It's a lot easier to change things. So what I did was, here's what I said to her. Friend, we don't really care. I don't really want to um, like put you outside and let other people do the work for you, and then you end up being unhappy about it. So I know I can do this work. I can do it to a point that you know we didn't say it out, but we both know that I can do it to the point that she will be insanely satisfied with it, and that will
Mm.
be the best work that she has ever seen. And so I go like, yeah, I think like let me do it for you. So I'm gonna budget a day or two, like, and then let's sit together. Let's get it done straight away. And for a day, it'll be like about 1.5 should be good. A day or two, 1.5 should be good. And then when I started coding, I'm like, oh shit, this is more than a day or two's work.
This is
Okay.
more.
And then I go like, oh, yeah, it's a bit too much. And then she went like, do you need to increase the price? I go like, yeah, I might need another day or two. So let's times two the price. And she's go like, that's a little bit off my budget. Okay. Which times two is 3K, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's like, that's a bit out of my budget. I go like, what's your budget? 2.5. Okay, deal. Let's go. I don't want to think about it's not thinking about the money at this point, but I go like, okay, fine, let's do it. And well, the I don't know what happened, but we did that site last December, and in
Mm-hmm.
January, I think she closed enough sales somehow for the entirety of I think 6 months or a year. And I go like, what the hell happened?
Like in month. That's super impressive.
When I did that, I actually redesigned it. When I did her site, I redesigned her sales page
Mm.
at the same time because I've been doing a lot of sales stuff and all that stuff, and how the sales page work, how does it convert, and then she got good content, she got good copywriting. So how does it convert? And she has elements that doesn't really fit there, and it detracts attention away from the person. So I
Yeah.
streamline the attention, and there we go. Well, nobody
Cool.
knows what happened. Nobody was tracking the conversion rates, but in January she sold more than like she got enough of her year settled. They're like, oh, cool.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
I
hearing
still,
stories like this.
I still have no idea what I did that worked and what I did that didn't.
Maybe it's like, so if you say that you redesigned it, maybe the new design is more appealing for people than she's
No, the,
getting.
the design was really I didn't change the design elements. The
Mm.
design was completely the same. I changed the
Ah.
formatting, I changed the structure, I even kept the fonts. I just improved the typography a little bit here and there, like because
Mm.
it was like too sparse or that kind of stuff. I improved the way it read, and there were some elements that didn't really fit, so I kind of changed certain portions of the elements. But the general style, the design is still
Mm.
kind of
Cool.
there. Like it's the same colors. I did not use other colors. Stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we were we're meant to talk about JavaScript, but I've learned a lot about negotiating and freelancing, which is great. Great.
I'm sorry.
I actually enjoyed learning about that. I think that we we can also like I mean, you've mentioned it in between the JS roadmap, learn JavaScript, but I wanted to like ask you about what is it that you're currently working on now, and if so, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, I'm working on this course called Asynchronous, Understanding Asynchronous JavaScript. I just call it async.js.today sometimes because that's the link.
Yeah,
Learn JavaScript is LearnJavaScript.today. So I just thought I want to continue
that's a
with the .today
cool
thing.
brand though. It's
Yeah.
easy to remember.
I'm also doing a CSS course with Hui Qing, and that's
Hmm.
called Essential CSS.today. So yeah, there we go. Um, so in asynchronous JavaScript, what we do is we go into how do you actually use async JavaScript, and
Mhm.
again we go back to the basics of what is async JavaScript in the first place, because some people actually think all callbacks are asynchronous, which no, and then I have to go and explain why, and then go into what is actually asynchronous, and then go into promises and async away, and then why, when, and use what, why. Then you go into, oh, what the hell is async for? Because you learn the async for only one reason, right? That's to connect to APIs, you know, for example. And then we
Yeah.
go connecting to APIs, and that's where all the shit begins to happen. You go into a server, and then authentication needs to happen, because otherwise you cannot. You can connect and play with toys out there, but you can't actually do shit, because without authentication, nobody allows you to do that. And unfortunately, in this day and age, I'm probably dragging a little bit here, but in this day and age, nobody gives you a username and password to log in anymore, which
Yeah, that's
everything
so
is
good.
all OAuth. And
Yeah.
okay, fine, let's teach OAuth. So I'm a little bit begrudging in that way, because that was the process. I wanted to keep it simple, but it is not simple at all. And which is why there's a lot of heaviness inside this topic. Then
Mm.
web security that we talked about. So everything is baked in there. How do you use cookies? How do you store credentials? How do you get credentials passed around? And blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then we
Mm.
end off building like a login, social media login. So you can log in at Facebook, Twitter, Google, GitHub, follow them. And the funny thing is, all of them implement OAuth differently, slightly differently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that to be like doing, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so that's one thing that we're gonna build. The second thing we're gonna build is a social media scheduler, so you actually learn to use the API and
Mm.
figure out what to do. I'm still trying to figure out how to best teach that, because I also want to teach people how to walk through that documentation, which
Mhm.
it's going to be slightly harder. Like that process. It's not just building; it's how do you actually go about the process of building something like that, and that's I'm still trying to walk through how, like,
Yeah.
in my mind, like how do I do that. All right. And Essential CSS is a course on CSS. And the whole idea is what is essential for people to learn about CSS, that they can build something good for themselves. And we stop there. Like all the extra stuff, we don't really talk about it. Like
Interesting.
prefers reduced motion, that kind of stuff. We don't talk about
Mm.
it. We don't
Mm.
talk about SAS. We talk about flags. We talk about grid. We talk about box model layout and all that stuff. Like the really basic stuff that you need to know in
Yeah.
order to build what you want. And that's it. That's the notion of essential CSS. Nothing extra.
Yeah, I think it's always good when you're like, for example, you're making a course and you want to be sure that you have like a target audience. In this case, you're focusing on people that want to learn the essentials, right? But the moment you like say, "Oh, I want to teach everything," then it becomes like, well, it's either it's not in depth enough that you just breeze through everything, or you're not covering as much as you should cover. So I like courses that are like this year's essential, and then maybe intermediate CSS in the future, or going
Yeah.
forward we could do more.
Well,
Interesting.
the reason I do that is also because I've learned from my mistake with Learn JavaScript. Because
It's
I wanted to cover things to a point where it's detailed enough. So, origin story of Learn JavaScript. I got so fed up with people asking me about JavaScript. So, let me teach you how to do 15 things or 20 things. I said 20. All right, 20 things, and then you will know JavaScript like the back of your hand. And I sold it for $75 at that point. I'm like, cool. Shouldn't be too hard, right? 20 things. All right. The hard part is, shit, I need to start teaching the basics, and then go like, oh shit, and oh shit, and oh shit, and oh shit, and oh shit, to a point it took 4 years to write. 300 plus lessons. So I learned from that mistake, because to teach something to that level, you really need that depth. So I'm splitting up
Yeah.
myself basically.
Yes, that's a good approach. Well, I feel like with everything that you shared, the things that you're working on, it feels like you're very busy. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed having you on, and it was nice to learn about not just JavaScript, like I said, freelancing and negotiating and all of that stuff. I think we are almost at the end of our interview. We've been able to go through the chats to answer some questions that people had. So thank you so much, Zell. Very nice having you on. Any parting like words for people? I don't know, maybe people that are interested in learning JavaScript and they're tuned in. What one advice would you give to them? Yeah.
People who are learning JavaScript and they want to learn, I would say take it slow. I wouldn't no, take it slow is not the right word. Take your time.
Okay.
And if that helps, go for a JavaScript roadmap because it's free anyway. I explain why taking your time is important.
Hmm. Interesting. Thank you. That's very helpful. All right. It was super nice having you all. Thank you for sticking around. I'll see you next week where we
Thanks for
have a
having me. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.